Hello everyone, welcome back to the White One Auto YouTube channel. And what we have in here today, this is a 2009 Chevrolet Impala. It's towed down here from a local guy. So what's going on with this thing? He says that he put fuel in it and then it died out. And he said gave him a throttle body code, a few other codes, and he wants to get it fixed. So you can see he's done some customization to the vehicle here. And one thing I noticed is that this thing has a cold air intake. And it also, where these cold air intakes fit is right on top of the PCM. The wiring is right there. A few years back, I did a short, I believe, about a car that had a cold air intake, and the wiring and the intake, the filter, because this is metal, had rubbed through on some of the wiring and was chafing the wiring and was causing a bunch of problems. So you can see down there that that wiring is exposed, and it's pretty close to that filter. And you can see down here we got some tape on our transmission control module. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with this thing, but my first step is we're going to remove this bar and get a look at this wiring underneath there and see do we have any damage to that, because we need to repair that first if that's the case. So like I always say, I want you to start with a good visual inspection, because a good visual inspection can sometimes lead you to water. So hopefully we find water down here. And yeah, so I'm gonna grab some tools. We're gonna take this bar off. Hopefully it comes off easily. You can see this nut bolt assembly. I'm not sure what they got going on here, but we'll figure it out. So because we see this screw here is kind of funky, we're gonna hopefully just pull this one out. Hopefully think we can whip that out. Hopefully we can swing this bar out of the way here. Oh, we got a spark plug boot holding our PCV too. Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do there, I guess. So you don't want to scratch the paint here. Move this out of the way. Okay, so now, well, I thought we could get access. So we're gonna have to pull some of these hex bolts out and these sheet metal screws to get a look down here. How is it? Yeah, so after we get these out and these sheet metal screws, we should be good to go. Okay, so we got our cover off. You can see. Huh. Doesn't look like. Let me pull. So I'm gonna pull this clamp off here. And hopefully we can get this air cleaner out of here. Out of there. Just as I suspected here. You can see, let's focus in. This wiring here is chafing through. Like I said, I've seen this once before with these cold air intakes. Yeah. So that is what I thought would be going on. So, yep. Yeah, so we gotta fix that first. Just trying to let it focus in here. But you can see the shininess. The shininess is the copper that's coming through, and this is a really poor setup. It needs to have the factory intake box back on here. And yeah, we fixed that wiring. 'Cause I know everyone wants a race car, but yeah, it takes a lot to build a race car. There's no shortcuts in race cars. They gave us approval to put the factory air box in there. It took a couple of days because unfortunately I did something I shouldn't do, and I'm not doing anymore. I let them get the air box, so they got it. So we got it there. I started pulling this thing out, and then I realized, like, man, I did not update the video. So we've got our box off here, our old air car Fast and Furious intake. That's all. So what we're gonna do is start fixing this PCM wiring. I think you can see a little bit better picture of it there, how it's rubbed through. So we are gonna repair this here and then put it back to function and see, do our codes go away? Because you gotta have a solid foundation. If you have wiring that is touching, you're not gonna be able to diagnose anything else. So you gotta repair this first. And I'm pretty sure that factory intake outperforms this cold air intake that they had. Another thing I wanna notice is, show you, is that I noticed while I was removing it, is that the elbow, so they had their custom elbow here, and there was the spark plug boot there. Now our mass airflow sensor was here, so you can see how we got this opening right here. They gunked it full of something, so I guess they knew a little something, but I still believe it was probably leaking air. You don't want to have an air leak after your mass airflow sensor, because that makes it not perform well. So what we got to do is fix this wiring and then mount our factory air box back in. It looks like that's the old part broke off there, so we should be able to get it back in place here. So let's do that. Okay, so we got the lower part of our air box in. We have our wiring fixed here. So what we're gonna do is tape this up, seat the ECM and the TCM down here, and then get our air box in and clear codes and see how she runs. Okay, so we got our air box on. It's all hooked up correctly, but there's one thing I want to point out. So this is the lid that the customer brought me. This is it right here. You see where the mass airflow sensor goes? And you see how this is the cover where the air filter goes. See how all of this is one piece? The correct one should look like this, where the mass airflow sensor is round and just kind of is made into this elbow, and that bolts to the airbox lid. So we had to go pick up that. We'll give this here back to the customer because they wanted all of their old parts back, which are fine with me, including their intake. I hope they don't put it back on. So wait, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. So when I was putting this wiring back, I noticed how, you see how all of this loom is missing there? The protective loom that keeps the wire from chafing away. And look down here. You see that? See that metal clip there? So that will definitely rub through. So we're gonna remove that metal clip. And really this wire needs to be cleaned and reloomed. And you see here where somebody did a ground repair, and they're using a heat shrink style ring terminal, which is good, but you should at least heat shrink it so moisture and water can't get in there and protect that ground. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run a code scan to make sure our repair is good, and then so we'll go run a code scan. So we'll let this run through. Okay, so we're done running our code scan. We do got one engine code. Let's see what it is. That's a 523, an engine oil pressure switch code. So what I want to do is, let me go in. I'm gonna go into the module itself and clear it. Then, because remember, we just did a wiring repair. So we'll go code menu and see, does it read again? And it's not resetting. So since it's an oil pressure switch code, the first thing we want to do is we want to check our oil level to make sure that is good. So we're going to once. We wiped it off. Let's see where we're reading. So we're approximately probably a quarter so low because it's showing up way down there at the bottom. So we're gonna add a half a quart of oil to this thing and see does it bring it up, and then we'll let it run. Okay, so we added some oil to it. Let's check it. So we're at a good level there. So what we're gonna do is start it up and let it run and see does this thing reset here. Okay, so on our Impala here, it did reset that code for the engine oil pressure sensor switch. You can see we got, so you can see we have that code there at 523. We don't have a check engine light, but we do have that issue. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna save that repair of that for another video. So we're gonna close this video out, and you saw how we made that repair and how we diagnosed that. But one thing I really want to talk about is on these Impalas, that cold air intake where it just sits over top of the PCM wiring, that is kind of a big issue, because this is the second car I know I've done a video on where that was the issue. Our throttle body codes aren't returning, so that's all set, and the car doesn't need a throttle body or an accelerator pedal. It just needed to have that exposed wiring repaired. So we'll do another video on the engine oil pressure switch. And remember, a good visual inspection is always your friend. And when you install aftermarket components, always be on the lookout, because if you remove something, they will affect something else. Like, they package this stuff in cars so tight that if you change something, it gives you issues most likely. And hopefully they will do some more wiring repairs on this thing. And talk to our customer about that engine oil pressure switch, and they want that thing fixed. So we're just gonna make it one big video. So the code is this code right here, P0523. Now it says oil pressure high. So just because we have that code, it doesn't mean that the sensor is bad. It means you need to check it out and see why is that reading high. So we're gonna go to a code description and we're gonna figure out why is it reading high. Is the sensor bad, the wiring bad, the PCM bad? What is bad? So this thing will reset after just a few moments of running, so we know the fault is constant. So let's figure it out. Okay, so we're gonna make this testing short and sweet. So at our connector, so this is what our connector looks like. It's a round 3-wire sensor and it has 3 wires. It has a black wire, which is low reference like a ground, a gray wire, which should have 5 volts on it, and a signal sensor wire, which is a tan with white. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna check to make sure this 5-volt reference is there. Then we're gonna check to see if that has a good ground. And then we'll jump the 5-volt reference to the signal, and then we should be able to see this thing peg out in the scanner. And once it's pegged out in the scanner, we should see a lot of oil pressure. So let me show you what I mean. Okay, so now let's back out of here and let's go look at engine data to see what oil pressure is reading now. So we'll go to display data, we'll go engine data, and it should have an engine oil pressure sensor switch reading. I believe it's going to be toward the bottom. So right now this thing is reading 129 PSI. So that's why we're getting that high reading, because it is pegged out. We know this car doesn't have 129 PSI of oil pressure. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this thing key on. We're going to raise it up and see, does the wiring look like it's pinched? And if we unplug it, that should go away. And then we'll check our 5-volt reference. We'll jump it and then see, does it still peg this thing out? Because if it keeps it pegging it out after we jump in it and we unplug it and the reading goes away, we know all of our wiring is good. So I believe if we unplug this, it should reduce. So let us raise the car up and see what happens. See that clip right there, that really oily thing? That's our engine oil pressure switch, and that's the connector. So what we're gonna do is unplug this and then see what our sensor reads, because it should go down. The reading should go down. Because if it's pegged high like that, when we're off, you have one or two issues. A wiring problem, or you have a sensor that is stuck on bad. So let's unplug this and see what our scanner reads. Okay, so we got our connector unplugged, and you can see how oily that thing looks. So that means that this sensor here is probably leaking internally. So now let's go over to our scanner. So now we are getting a reading of 0. So we have 0. So we know this thing is leaking. It's getting our wiring wet, and we know we have a 5-volt reference because our computer is picking up the reading of going sky high and then going low, and that could only happen if we have our 5-volt reference. So we've essentially determined that all of our wiring is good. We just have a bad sensor. So let's get this sensor out and put a new one in. Part number 4, it came in a set. I believe this one should work, and I would recommend that you unhook your battery to do this. And I'm gonna let the car down to unhook my battery too, because you're working near the starter. So unhook the battery to pull this thing out. Okay, so we've loosened our battery. We're gonna get this thing out of the way and make sure it can't make contact, because our starter cable is right there, and that's a hot cable that goes straight to that starter, and you will make fireworks and get to arc welding and burn yourself and damage your car a lot. Because this area where we're working is such an oily mess, I'm gonna spray some bake parts cleaner and get some compressed air and blow all this gunk away, because I don't want to put any of this dirt inside the oiling system. I want to keep this thing as clean as possible. So you see how it looks now. So we'll spray it off and clean it, and I'll check you back in. Okay, now one tip I'm going to give you. I hope I can focus in. So do you see that little yellow rubber boot on this connector? You may want to remove that. Sometimes that'll get stuck inside the connector, but when you get in here blowing this thing with compressed air, that may blow off, and you need that to be your weather tight connector. As well as sometimes you may pull it off and that white part gets stuck inside the sensor. That's okay, because when you get the old sensor out, you can remove it then. So I'm gonna pull that yellow boot off, and then I'm gonna blow this off. Okay, so we've cleaned this thing off, and I think it should look a lot better. Our connector looks better. That boot is on there. We'll grommet. Let me see. So now I feel a lot more comfortable removing that, and we should limit the amount of contamination as best as possible. Okay, so finally we got our oil pressure sensor switch out. You can see it's a ton of oil in there. This is what this thing looks like. It's filthy. So sit over there. This is our new one. That's the part number. So we're gonna get this thing out and get it installed. I gotta clean up my hands and my socket so we contaminated none. So let us do an unboxing. We're gonna pull this thing out. And this is what it looks like. So you see that O-ring there? So we don't need any sealant on here. Just gonna screw this in by hand and then tighten it down with our socket. No sealant, just screw it in. It's got an O-ring seal there. This is a brand new part. Excuse me. God bless me. Brand new part from GM. So we're gonna get this thing installed. Okay, so let's bring you up to see what we can see. So we got our new sensor installed there. So we're gonna pull that cap off and get it plugged in. Okay, so we got that all taken care of. She's plugged in. Now what we're gonna do is pull our light out, let it down, hook our battery up, and see what our scanner reads. Okay, so we got our battery hooked back up. Let's come over here and see what our scanner is reading. So we'll go up the Chevy. So it's reading 1.7. That is exactly where we should be reading. So we fixed our issue. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna exit out of here. We will clear our code. So we'll go clear code. Do that. And we're gonna key off for a few moments. Then we'll key back on, cut our lights off. Let's go check our code again. And so we're gonna let this thing run. We're gonna let it, you can see the time right there. So we're gonna let this thing run, because it was resetting in under 5 minutes. So we will let it run and see what happens, but we know we fixed it. Okay, so this thing's been running for a few minutes and it hasn't reset the code. We knew it wasn't its fix. So we did this repair here today on our Chevrolet Impala. That aftermarket air cleaner had us setting, I believe it was a 2195, and the P2195 and the P0523 was called from a failed engine oil pressure switch. So this thing is fixed, it idles, it runs, it drives, and it's all set. So thank you all for following along. White One Auto, out. And remember, 2 things. It's cheaper to change your oil than change your engine, and a visual inspection is your friend. And it's only expensive when you pay for the same thing twice.